Right. Good morning. Morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. I'm Kirk Van Tine. I'll be on to help moderate today's session. So if you have any questions, concerns during the session, do submit those over, and I'll be able to pass those along to our speaker, Daniel. Our topic today is the great capabilities of the matrix. We've got some other sessions highlighted on the main screen here, so I do encourage everyone to go out to MPUG.com. We've added some new sessions over the last couple of weeks, so go out there and take a look at those and get registered for those events. Just a couple quick notes regarding today's session. We are using GoToMeeting. If you have any comments during today's event, if you want to submit those over, you can submit those through the chat window. You'll see a panel on the side there, and we'll get those over to our speaker, Daniel, and then we'll try to get as many of those on as possible. If you need a little bit more space on the screen, that orange arrow will collapse the panel and give you a little bit more space, and you can always also zoom in. There's an option to zoom in if there's a demo and you want to get a little bit closer look. We will get to as many of those questions as we can. You can just submit those through the chat window. We'll give out the PDU code for this session at the end. This session will be eligible for 1.5 PDUs. We will post a recording within about 2 to 3 business days, so we'll get that posted on the MPUG website as well. If you have any questions, comments, tips on future web events, do submit those over to info@mpug.com. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, we'll get going with today's session. I know we have quite a bit of material, so I'm glad to have Daniel Zitterback with Matan Consulting. I know many of you know Daniel from a previous session, and Mantan's also one of our sponsors. Daniel serves as the head of Mantan's EPM division and is a member of Mantan's board of directors. He has over 10 years of experience in setting up enterprise project management EPM systems at various organizations, defining methodologies, implementing and integrating supportive tools, and overseeing change management processes. In recent years, he's spearheaded complex organizational processes at various international organizations. He has a BSc in Industrial Engineering from Ben Gurion University. So with that, I'll pass over to Daniel to take it from here and guide us through today's session. Daniel, I'll make you presenter here.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Thanks for the presentation, and thank you all for joining. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. And Kirk, can you just tell me if you can see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Put it here in presentation mode. So what we're going to be talking about today is the great capabilities of the matrix. And basically what I wanted to talk about is the different organizational structure types that we have in different organizations. Now, as a consultant, I go and I see many different organizations over the year, and I've been involved in dozens of implementations of Project Server here in Israel in large and small organizations. And one of the first things that I need to know when I start an implementation, or even when I just start talking to the customer, is what type of organization do they have? What's their structure? How are they built? And what are their needs when we talk about the implementation? So basically, I'm going to be talking about the different types of organization structures that we have. I'll give you a short background on what the PM box says about these different organizational structures. And then I'll dive into some examples of how we've implemented Project Server in the various types of organizations and how it differs when you have different organizational types. So why do we really care about what the organizational structure is? How does that influence the way that we're going to be working with this company and about the needs of the company? So when you have different organizational structures, you have different needs of the different people, of the different managers that are involved in project and are involved in managing the organization. So things like task allocation are completely different if you have a resource manager that's managing things, or if you have a project manager that's in charge of doing things and people report directly to him. So when we go ahead and we talk about the different organizational structures, we'll also talk about how that affects the rest of the implementation. I'll start by talking a little bit about the functional structure organization. This is very common in organizations where they divide their organization into functional areas, things like operations, business management, marketing, finance, and so on. So you just, when they have a functional organization means that each function has its own people and they work on things according to the functional area that they're in. Basically, in organizations like this, the person who is really has most power with the organization is the division, the different division managers. So in our example here, you have the customer service manager, the business manager, marketing manager, operations manager, and they are the people in the organization that are the decision makers. They are the people that it's their role and responsibility to go ahead and decide on who's working on what. Okay, so that's one type of structure that we have. And the structure has various strengths and weaknesses. Basically, its strengths are that the manager that really manages the team or manages the group is of that profession. So if we're talking about finance manager, he knows about finance, and all the people that are working within his division or her division are people that know finance and are working on the finance aspects of their work. And then different things like efficiency. So if I'm talking about an operational manager, and maybe she has 15 people on her team, so if she has different tasks, she can move resources around in her organization to different tasks and make sure that everybody's utilized and everybody's working and everybody's allocated appropriately. So if somebody is underallocated, you can add some tasks to this person, and if they're overallocated, you can ask somebody else within the team to help. What we see in organizations like these, and what the downside of it is that you see less innovation. You know, they say that in organizations that have teams that are not from the same areas of interest, they talk to each other more. They understand more about other things, and from understanding other aspects of the work, generally you get more innovation, you get more understanding in how you can improve things and change things within the organization. When you have organizations like this, functional organizations, it's harder to coordinate and communicate between the functions because the functional managers are like separate units, and they actually manage their people, and there's not a lot of interface with the other functional departments. And if there is such interface, it's usually, you know, it's our team against the other team, or our team that we're okay and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing right, but we're not getting things from the other department, and it creates different conflicts between these different organizations. So I talked briefly about the functional structure, and now I'll talk about the project-oriented structure. Before I dive into this, I just want to emphasize that when we talk about a functional structure and we talk about implementing a project server in organizations like these, many times I'm asked, or what we recommend, is to have project files for each functional area because we want to match the way that they do their business. We don't want them to have project files per project or per task or per any endeavor that's going on within that department. We want them to be very focused on that thing, excuse me. They want to be very focused on what they're doing. So many times we have a project file for each functional area there. When we talk about a project-oriented organization, we're talking about an organization that is in the other extreme. They take people and they group them up in groups project-oriented, meaning if I'm working on a new tool or if I'm working on a certain product, I have finance people, purchasing people, all kinds of people, but they're only working on my team. They're only working on my project, okay? So they're very focused on what they're supposed to be doing, but they're not interacting many times with other functional team members of their same area. So the finance person is dedicated to my project, which is great for me as a project manager, and he gives me all the services that I need there. In these kinds of organizations, and again, these are extremes what I'm talking about. I don't know many organizations that are strictly functional or many organizations that are strictly project. But in organizations like this, when I'm talking about the project-oriented group, we're talking about organizations where the project manager has most of the power within the organization. He's the go-to guy. He's the guy that actually manages people. He's the guy that will be the one they turn to, the team members turn to when they want a promotion or they want a raise, because he's the focus. And in the functional area that I talked about before, the people that you would turn to if you want to talk about, it's things like I said, a raise, promotion, or, just general things about the staff, you would turn to the functional manager because they are the people with the power within that organization. So you have different strengths and weaknesses when we talk about a project-oriented group. The advantage is many times in the organizational size. So when you have teams that work specifically on projects, you know that you have the right people to do the work and they're actually working on the things that you want them to be working on, and if you don't need someone from finance and you just take him off the team and so on. It enables you to be very customer focused or very product focused because everybody is working towards the same goal. The team is a mismatch of many different people, many different team members, and all of these team members are working towards the same goal. There are never conflicts because we're on the same project. We have the same goals. We have the same needs. The issue, the issues when you have an organization that's totally project-oriented is that when you work, many times you want to consult with different people that have expertise similar to your own. And because you're working on a project and you don't have anyone around you that knows, let's go back to the purchasing example. I'm a purchasing person. I'm assigned to a certain project. I'm working full-time on it. I have some questions. I want to talk to other people that have the same know-how as I do. It's harder to find these people when I'm working specifically with my team, which are all on the same project. So, it's harder to expand when you talk about the needs and the knowledge when you're within one project. You don't have a lot of different people, with different expertise from within the same world of finance or developing or QA and so on. And then there's always the question of the employees of how secure are they? Because they know that the project is supposed to end in 2 months, and then at the last 2 months, sometimes they run around all day just looking for their next project to make sure that they won't be laid off when the project is done. So there's that issue always in the air when you talk about an environment that's completely project-oriented. Any questions so far, Kirk?
Sorry about that, Daniel. No, we don't have any at this time.
Kirk, any questions?
Yep. Can you hear me okay, Daniel?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah, we don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
I'll keep monitoring them and we'll take another break here. Just let me know when you have time.
Okay, good.
All right.
So, saying all that, we talked about two different organizational structures. We talked about the project structure, and we talked about the functional structure. I'm going to dive into an example, and I'm going to talk about this company. They're an Israeli subsidiary of a very large international company. Basically, it's a group of 50 employees. They do mainly software development, and they've been working with Project Server since 2003. Recently, they've moved to Project Server 2010. They have, in the management, in the R&D division, which is the main division there, they have a director of R&D, and they have 4 project managers. And this is a project-oriented company. Basically, they have 4 projects, which are 4 different products that they work on, and they supply the software for these products. So a project can last between 2 and 4 years, and the project manager in this organization is definitely the focus, is definitely the king. They manage the team members, both the QA side, the development side, GUI side, and all that. So they're actually the managers. And in this organization, just to make it more interesting, they're also working in Agile. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how they do things there. So actually, out of the 4 project managers, 3 of the project managers are working with Agile methodologies, and they're also working with Project Server. And they're managing all of the work and all of the sprints within project files. So all resources use Project Server to report their work, what they're working on, according to the user stories, and the details break out from the user stories. And then they use timesheets. Project managers confirm timesheets at the end of the week, and that's the way they have the Burndown charts, the burn up charts, team velocity charts, and so on. The status reports are basically based upon the reporting of the team members, and they also report vacation and illness and all that kind of stuff, administrative time, through the system as well. So this is a structure that shows you how their files are consists of. Okay, so you see here, this is Sprint 30. This is a project file. In this project file, they have the different user stories that they're supposed to be working on within this sprint. And then you have sprint, the next sprint, and the sprint after that. And then when they want to see the whole story, the whole product, the whole project, they go ahead and they have a master file that consists of the 3 sprints that are now in focus. Okay, so they have the backlog of all the user stories here within this file, and they also present the sprints that are most interesting, the last sprint, maybe the next sprint, and the one after that, so they can really focus on what's been done and what still needs to be done when they look forward. So this file doesn't become a huge file, because after I finished Sprint 30 and I started Sprint 33, I'm going to take out Sprint 30 from this master file and make sure it doesn't become a monster for me. And I have different reports that I run on each of these sprints. Okay, so the way it looks is, when I talk about a sprint file, you'll see the name of the sprint up here. Usually it also has the name of the product. And then you have the different user stories that I'm going to be working on within that sprint. And that's the way the sprint file looks like. And then I have a master file that has Sprint 29 and Sprint 30 within the file here, embedded, so I can see all the information that I need about that sprint. And under the backlog summary task here, I can see all of the user stories and all of the details of if I finished them, if I still have to do them. Sometimes we put information like what sprint we are going to use, or we're going to be working on this user story, and so on. We also have different reports about, you know, the burndown chart. You can see the ideal burndown for the sprint. You can see things like remaining tasks. That's the dark blue line here, and the light blue line is the remaining, so that's actually the remaining effort, and this is the remaining tasks. And here on the bottom, I can see how many tasks I've actually finished within certain days. So I can see when I actually close tasks within the user stories, I can see it here in this view. So this is a story of an organization that's a project-oriented organization, and they have everything built here geared towards the project. Now, other cases that we use or that we go into project-oriented companies, we do an implementation where each project manager has one file, and that works great in many organizations. But sometimes when it's really large projects, they become very large project files. And then it's very hard to focus on what I'm supposed to be working on today. So if I have a 4,000 line project file, sometimes when I want to focus on things, it becomes harder to manage. So breaking it down into sprints, the way that you work at Agile, really helps the teams there focus on things that they've committed to, the user stories that they're committed to finishing during this current sprint. So the report we see here is a burn up chart. So basically what we see here is what we initially planned. That's the green line here. We can see the completed requirements in the blue line, and whatever sprint we're at, if it's sprint 25 and we're done here, we can also see the projected finish, if it's changed, if I have to add more sprints, or maybe I have to talk about some user stories that are not going to be going in to the product at this point. Any questions on this example?
We don't have any questions in the queue yet, so.
Kirk, do we have a quiet group today?
Yeah, we don't have any questions in the queue yet. If anybody does have any questions for Daniel, just submit them through the chat window. We'll get those on. Generally, we get more towards the end, it seems like, so we'll keep monitoring that for you.
Okay, very good. I hope this means that everything is very clear. So now we're going into what I find that most organizations work at. So most organizations that I meet actually are more a matrix organization, meaning that they're not clearly a functional organization. They're not divided very strictly into functional areas, or they are, but they also have a project side to them. And I'll talk about that and how that works. So a little history about the matrix organizations. So basically, the first company that actually developed the matrix structure is NASA. What they did is they took the functional structure that was very common in many organizations, and they said, we want to focus on the teams. We want to focus on our projects from one side, but we also want to have the different advantages from working on and having functional areas and having managers that really understand the work. So it's a more kind of team approach where the development of products is focused on that, but it's also allowing the groups to be together and work on their expertise and things that they know best. So in the PMBOK, they have this explanation of matrix organization that I thought that I'd put in here, which basically says that any organization that has both focus on and the functional structure and the project managers is more of have a responsibility together to prioritize the tasks that people are working on. So in this type of organization, matrix organization, you have it's very similar but different structure. On the one hand, you have the functional areas like you did in the functional organization. On the other hand, you also have project managers. And when you look at the functional manager, he is in charge in many cases of the people, and also the project manager is in charge of the people that are working on the project. And then you have the person in the middle, and suddenly you have a person that has two managers. You have, my direct manager could be either the project manager, or the direct manager could be the functional manager, and each one of them expects me to do and to do certain things and to be professional in different things. So we get a lot of good when we work like this, but we also have some disadvantages, and we'll talk about that soon. So when we talk about a matrix structure, we have the fact that a person reports generally to two, sometimes many more people, because one person can be involved in 5 or 6 different projects. And then you have this team member reporting both to a functional manager and to various project managers within that organization. And you really have to decide in this type of organization who is really responsible for the employees, and not only task-wise, but also who's in charge and who actually manages them. Who do they come to when they have issues with the organization, and so on. The good thing about matrix organizations is that they're very flexible. So you can really change things in an easier way than you could in any other strict other type of organization. But when we talk about the matrix organization, we're not talking about one type of organization. You have different extremes when you talk about matrix organizations, because you have some where the project manager is stronger in the organization, and he's the one that calls the shots, and he's the one that is actually in charge of things. And then you have other organizations where the functional managers are the stronger people in the organization, and we'll talk about what we call weak and strong matrices in the next slides. Before we dive into that and we talk about weak and strong matrices, I wanted to talk a little bit about the strengths of having a matrix structure organization. So I'm not going to go through everything. You have a recording of this, and you can go back to everything here. I just want to emphasize certain things. So things like better customer service, where you also have the dedicated people to projects on the one side, but you also have on the other side organizations where the team member can turn to other peers within his expertise and get more information from them and maybe serve the project in a better way. He can get the good guidance from the functional manager or from other senior members of his team, because they're not only divided into projects, they also have the capability to talk to different functional members of their teams. Resources. So I'm enjoying more of the capabilities here, because I can also have a person that's dedicated to a project. Let's say I have developers that can be associated to a certain project, but in the life cycle of the project, many times QA people are needed more or less in different projects. So I have a QA person that maybe is dedicated for one project, excuse me, And then you have other QA people that can move around between the different projects and allowing you to enjoy from the qualifications of a QA person within the project and also of the flexibility of moving team members around. The weaknesses of the matrix structure are also very you can see them very clearly when you go to organizations. Many times when I go to a matrix organization and I start talking to people in the field, they tell me, Daniel, I have 2 managers, and they have different requests from me, different expectations, and many times they don't really know who they need to work by. So if my project manager is telling me I need to be working on his project 60% of the time, and I have a functional manager and he's telling me, no, forget about that project, move to 2 other projects, you really need better communication. You need to make sure that it's very clearly defined who every team member reports to, because that could be kind of confusing for team members in organizations like that. In organizations that are matrix organizations, you have the various managers, and you have each manager wants his team or his team members to come to meetings that are talking about his area. So if it's a functional area manager, he'll want people to come to his meetings and talk about different professional things. And then you have the project manager that has his own meetings, and that could create potentially some time-consuming meetings, and that will take away from the availability of the various people in the projects and in the organization. I like this little Dilbert cartoon, so hope you got a chance to read that while I was talking about this. So as I said, when we talk about matrix structures, we have different types of structures. We have a weak matrix, and we have what we call a strong matrix. Now, these are all things that I've been very focused on and talked about in the PMBOK. And because the PMBOK is focused on the project manager and look at everything from the project side, what they call a strong matrix is the organization where the project manager is stronger than the functional manager in the organization. And when I say stronger, I mean he is the go-to guy for the team member. He's the one that the team member will listen to when there are disagreements. Okay, he's the one that many times will be the one that decides on things within the organization. He'll be stronger when it comes to asking for more resources. He'll have more influence there. And we'll talk about an example of a strong matrix and an example for a weak matrix as we go along the slides here. I want to dive into another customer case study. This is an example of a strong matrix organization, meaning again that this is an organization where the project managers are stronger within the organization. So in this example of this organization, it's a big agricultural division at a company, at a certain company. So they have the teams of the division, they provide services to the different projects. And as I said, the project managers here are the ones that actually plan out the work for the resources. All that the team managers do is assign their team members to the various projects. So they'll go ahead and say, Joe, you're assigned to project X for 60% of your time. And then 40% of your time you're supposed to be working on a different project. So that's in this example, the team managers have the role and responsibility of telling their resources what they're supposed to be doing project-wise, but when it comes down to the tasks and planning them out, they are actually not involved. They could potentially help their resources, when they talk about the various tasks and maybe help them professionally, but they're not the ones that decide what tasks I'm supposed to be working on within a certain project. The team leaders in this organization, the issues that we saw when we came and they asked us for some help is that the team leaders didn't have any tool to manage their assignments. So the organization was using Project Server, and each project manager had his own project file, and he allocated resources that were given to him by the resource managers, by the functional managers, but there was no way for the functional manager, excuse me, to see that his team member is actually allocated to the project in the way that he agreed to with the project manager. So the project managers went ahead and they assigned the teams according to their needs and not necessarily based on what they agreed with the team managers. The team managers came up and they said, you know, we really have a need here. We really need some help because we want to be able to manage our allocations for the team members. We understand the project managers need their tool and they have their project files, and that's great for them, but I want to make sure that I understand how they actually are planning to allocate my resource, and if they're trying to get someone for more of his allocated time, I want to know about that. Maybe I can help. Maybe I can give them another resource, switch out the resource for someone else. Maybe I can go and talk to the project manager, and before we actually get to the point where the team member feels like he can't do all the work because he's vastly over allocated, we can talk about that, and I can see that in one place. And also a place where we can communicate between ourselves and make sure that we're aligned. So in this example, as I said, the project managers were using Project Professional and within the project server. And what we did was we implemented a tool. So this is not a tool that we developed. It's a tool that was developed by a company called Milestone Consulting Group. And what I really want you to emphasize is less on the tool but more on the process that we put here together, because you can also take this process and maybe manage it more manually, but manage it within an Excel file and see things within reports, okay? So that's the main focus here. So what we do here, or what the resource manager does when he wants to go ahead and once a week look at all of his allocations, he goes to the resource center. And then the resource center, we added a button here called Resource Management. He only sees, this is the accountant, the accounting field manager. He has 6 people in his team, and you can see the names here. What he wants to see is all of the requests from the different project managers for an accountant, because in this organization, the project managers can't assign named resources without getting permission from the functional area manager. So we click here on Resource Management, and then he gets a really nice view here saying we're looking for accountants for a project called Automated Software Design Architecture, and for one that's called Data Parsing Tool. So I can see exactly what the needs are, and it's broken up into months here. You can also break it up to different days or weeks, but that doesn't really matter. So I see I need a 0.2 allocation. That means 1 day a week of a certain person here, and for different projects I need different people. So after I saw this, I can go back to the previous screen and ask to see everyone that's in my team, so I can see who has time to work on that project that I just showed you. And when I click here on the team, I can see both the generic resource accountant, and I can see the names of all the accountants within my team. So I see down here that so Niraj has some time. He's not fully allocated. I see he's 60% allocated. I see that he has some time. So maybe I want to go ahead and I want to copy, the needs here from, copy the needs here from the data parsing tool, and I want to put it into Niraj and see that he actually works on this project. So first thing I want to do, I want to click here on Add Project. I click on Add Project. I can choose whatever project I want Niraj to work on now. And I choose the project, Data Parsing Tool, go ahead and click Continue. I copy these items. I just do copy of these items here, and I say paste them down here. And now I actually added the allocation from this project to Niraj. And this is my way to communicate to the project manager, I'm going to assign Niraj to your project. Obviously, we're also going to do this in a meeting where this doesn't replace communication in meetings and so on. And then the data parsing tool manager knows that he has 1 day of allocation of Niraj for that period. So this is one process we go through in this organization. Another scenario is that I want to go in and I want to see if the project manager is allocating people according to what I agreed to. So I'm going ahead and I'm looking here at Brian, and I can see here that I allocated Brian to work 50% of his time on this project called Online News Publishing Tool. But the project manager went ahead and assigned him to 70% allocation, meaning he is trying to use more of Brian's time that I allocated to him. So it's very clear here that there is a problem. So I, as the team member, as a team manager, I can go ahead and say, okay, I understand that you need more resources here. I'm going to assign someone else. Who else has time? I go ahead here and I see Niraj again. Niraj has some more time. He's allocated only 80% of his time. Maybe I can take some of the work and transfer it to Niraj. Obviously, I need to talk to the project manager, make sure that this would work for him, and then I can go ahead and allocate some of Niraj's time that he still has to that project, and then actually you'll see afterwards that the project plan, the project manager needs to go back into his plan and switch out the tasks that he wants now Niraj to do to Niraj, so this report shows me that he's not using Brian to do things that he's not supposed to. Any questions about this example?
Dan,
Kirk?
we have some questions that came in before the example. I don't know if you want to address those or not now.
Sure. Yeah.
Tom had a question. How do you manage the cross-functional teams under 1 PM?
How do you manage the cross-functional team under 1 PM? Actually, I have an example. That's the next example that I'm going to go into. So I'll show one way of doing that. So I'll take that question next.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions?
He had another follow-up question. Maybe let me know if you're going to be covering this a little bit. But who manages the timesheets for team members that work under various PMs? So I don't know if that ties into that as well.
So definitely, I'll actually answer that question. So it really depends on the organization, and if you have, a matrix organization where maybe it's a strong matrix organization. So sometimes you have a timesheet manager that is the project manager for each project. Okay, so it really varies within the different organizations, but it really depends on who is the actual manager for these things. Many times we don't use timesheets for that. We actually use My Tasks for reporting. So you can use the assignment owner. So different people get reports on different on the different tasks. Okay. Does that answer the question there?
We'll assume so, and if Tom has a follow-up, we'll just have
Okay.
him submit one. The only other question we have right now is Joe was asking if you could explain more of what a sprint file is.
Sure. So when you work in Agile, either in Scrum or whatever methodology that you have, everything is divided into sprints, and you're very focused on a certain sprint. So sprint is it could vary between 2 and, I don't know, what I've encountered is 2 to 4 weeks of a sprint where you have certain user stories that you have to hit during this period, and you have to have a full life cycle around them that consists both of design, development, and QA. So when you finish a sprint, you have something closed and ready to show the team and the client, who's usually involved with Agile teams, and show them a complete scenario that's, that does certain things. So when teams are involved in sprints, they're very focused on what they're supposed to be finishing for the end of the sprint. They look directly at what they're supposed to be finishing in their user stories, and it really helps them to have one file that only consists of what they're supposed to be focusing on now, so they know what they're supposed to be working on, and they don't have to go ahead and look at the big picture all the time.
And we'll just take this one last question. Tom just had a follow-up to the question you answered just a little while ago. His need is to spread the timesheet responsibility across multiple resource managers.
Yeah. So that would be development. I don't know of a way to do that within the timesheet capabilities out of the box, but I'm sure that's something that your consultant can work with you and maybe develop a mechanism around that. If that is a true need and you can't find a different way of doing things. So sometimes you work with timesheets, but you can actually switch into My Tasks because that would fit your way of doing business, and sometimes not. And then you have to go ahead and develop something. I can't think of a way to do that out of the box. I'm sorry.
All right, Daniel, we'll let you get back to it and stop in a little bit again.
Okay. So when we talked about the matrix organization, we talked about, now we had an example of a strong matrix organization, and now we're going to actually answer the question that was asked before, and it's actually an example of a weak matrix organization. The weak matrix organization is where the functional area managers are stronger and have more control over what the team members are actually doing within the organization. So when we talked about the strong matrix example, we talked about the fact that the project managers are actually in charge of the team members, and they are the ones that tell them exactly what needs to be done and what the sequence is and what the priority of the tasks are, and so on. When we talk about a weak matrix organization, we have a project manager, but I don't really like calling him a project manager. He's more a project coordinator. He's more a person that makes sure and looks at things from the eyes of the project, but many times it could be a very young project manager or just somebody in entry-level management, and he doesn't have a lot of power in the organization. But he is in charge of giving management the picture of how the project is moving along and raising flags when things aren't moving according to what needs to be done. And if different functional managers are doing things to affect his project, again, it's their job to raise flags and talk about what's going on there. But he doesn't have a lot of power to change things. That's more of a weak matrix. So when we talk about places like this that have a weak matrix, you have the functional areas, and then you have a project coordinator that is not even in charge. He knows that he has team members from each functional area that are part of his project, and he talks to them and he gets information from them, but he doesn't actually tell them what they need to do. So in this organization type, you can see that the guy that's really stronger here is the functional area manager, and the coordinator, isn't really in charge. He is more of a coordinator. So the story around this one here is this is a global designer and manufacturer of medical monitoring equipment. That's the company, and the company is privately owned. It has like 130 employees in that organization. Now, a few months ago, well, this is actually more like 8 months ago, we started to implement Project Server 2010, and the projects there were mainly managed by the R&D managers, and they weren't really managed by the project managers there. So until a year ago, you had the project managers. They had their own local MS project files with all the tasks in the project, and the functional managers, they didn't even hold work plans. Management requested to see all the projects in one central place, and the organization, the senior managers there were saying, nobody really is taking responsibility on things. Everybody, if I'm late with something, I go back and I say, I didn't get anything from this project manager, I didn't get something from that functional manager, and it's never anybody's fault that we're not on schedule and that things are being pushed out. And they wanted to change that. They wanted people to take and to be accountable for things that they're doing. So what they decided there is to allow the team managers to plan the work for their teams and to give them an actual tool to do that, because they wanted the team managers to have a tool to plan out all of the work of their team members and take that away from the project managers that weren't really doing that. They didn't really get all the full picture of the allocations of the team members, and that was a big problem there where they didn't have any accountability for things. So this looks complicated in the first sight, so just bear with me. Each square here actually represents a project file. So for each department, actually here for each team, every team had a different project file for each project that they are working on. Okay, so as a team manager for software, if I looked at, if I wanted to look at all the projects that they're working on there, I had to open a master file that had this project file. It's called Micro 1.5, so it was called Software Micro 1.5, and then it also had a team work file. So this is general tasks within that team. So they could see, the team manager could actually see everything that people from their team are working on and also allocate them to the different tasks. And then the project manager, who is really a project coordinator, is able to see, to view the different work packages from the different teams in one master file, but he's not actually, or she's not actually in charge of changing things or updating things. Things are being changed by the team managers here, and all that the project manager or the project coordinator can do is actually see how that affects his tool or his project. Okay? So if you have questions later on, I'll go back to this slide over here. And I just want to show you a short demo of how this looks. So they had one project called Made in Israel. So this is the project file for the project manager. Okay? So this is a project file for our project manager. and you can see that he has different summary tasks here for the different departments. Here's for engineering, this is for purchasing, this is for QA. And if I want to detail out things from purchasing, I can see it all here, all of the tasks. But if I want the team manager to actually plan this work and allocate people to it, what he needs to do is take this work package and send it to the project file or the work package file of the team manager. So here we're using, and again, this is just an example. We're using a tool by Matan. This is called MasterLink. But again, focus here on the process. I'm saying that I have a project file both for the project manager and for each team manager. I have a project file for each project he's working on. Okay, so if you have MasterLink, you can go ahead and choose a certain a work package that you want to send someone. Click here on links. Just have MasterLink up here and click here on links, and then you can send the work package to a different file. So I click here on send. I choose what project I want to send to. I start by clicking purchasing. I find purchasing for Made in Israel. Click on this. I tell it where I want to put that work package. Click on OK. And now I've sent this work package to be detailed in the other project file. Okay. I click on publish, and then I go ahead and I see that I'm connected to this other project file. Now, what I want to do is go ahead and open that linked file. Now I'm going in as the team manager. Okay. And it says here that I have new tasks that were assigned to me. Click on OK, and now I see that I was assigned this work package. And I can go ahead and I can detail the work package out. Put task 1, 2, and 3 in here. And whatever changes I make here and I assign my resources to, whenever I choose, I can go ahead and publish this file, excuse me, which in turn updates the project file with the current dates, the current work, the current percent complete of this summary task within their file. Okay? So we looked at things from the project manager view, and we sent something to the team manager. So after the team manager adds this and details the work plan for this work package, he'll want to go ahead and see different information from the different work packages in one place. So I'm switching to the QA manager, and this is his file. This is the master file for QA. And you can see here in this organization, we divided it by the names of the team managers. That was the file, or the naming convention is the name of the project manager, the team manager there. And here you can see it by the project. Okay, so if I go in here to see QA, these are all inserted project plans. So I can see, as the team manager, I can see all of the tasks that my team is supposed to be working on, and if I have over or under allocations of resources, I can work on it from this file. So the project coordinator has his own file. The team leader has his own master file that he can see the view of his whole team, but he can also drill down into work packages that are associated to certain projects themselves. Any questions on this?
We have a couple questions in the queue. Bill had a question. How are scheduling standards enforced among all the team schedules?
So the scheduling needs to be enforced only in the team manager's files, because that's where we actually go ahead and we detail the plan. That's where we do the task planning. That's where we do the resource planning. That's where we do the assignment planning. The project coordinator, he has his own file, but it's a reflection of tasks. It's a reflection of work packages that come from the various project files that the team managers are managing. So all of the rules, all of the instructions for scheduling are taught to the resource managers, to the team managers. They're the ones that need to enforce everything, and it's just like you do in any other implementation.
All right, we have another question. Who owns the critical path for the entire project?
Great question. This is actually owned by the project manager. So I actually have a slide here that talks about this. Again, this is just an example, but when and if you use MasterLink, you can go ahead and you can choose a task that you want to see the critical path that leads to it. And you can see here, this is from the project called PM Made in Israel. This is the project manager's file. He chooses a milestone within his project. And when he goes to the view here, what he sees is the critical path not only from his project file, but because there's a work package that details something out from his project to another project, you can actually go ahead and look and find the critical path that is actually coming from the engineering file. Hope that answers the question.
All right, we have one other question in the queue. How does this relate?
But the project manager is the one in charge to raise the flags on that.
And this might be related. This question in the queue, the last one we've got for now, is how does this relate to timesheets for team members? Who is in control?
In this scenario, it's very clear. The team manager is in control. Again, this is a weak matrix organization. Team managers, functional managers are the ones that are going to be approving hours. They're in control of almost everything. All that the project side, the project coordinator does is raise flags telling you who's on the critical path, who do I need to focus on, which one of the functional managers moved something or has dropped the ball on the critical path, and you need to do something in order for the project to get back on track. So timesheets are completely in the hands of the functional manager in this scenario.
All right, Daniel, I'll let you keep going.
Okay, so actually we're really almost at the end. Just a short summarizing of what we've talked about here. And we'll have a lot of time for questions if people have them. So we talked about the functional structure. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses of having a structure like that within your organization. And then we talked about the project structure. We talked a lot about the matrix structure, which tries to build upon the good from each one of the other structures, to take only the things that they feel are good within those structures and implement them in the organization. Excuse me. Now, I don't know about you guys, but in many of the organizations that I've taken part in projects, they have, on occasion, some more than others, they have organizational structure changes. And these can affect the way that the organization works, the roles and responsibilities of people. And you really, when you make changes like that, you need to understand how that affects the whole organization and each one individual of the managers and how they do business at that time. How the power is shifting between the various managers when you create such changes of the structure of your organization. And that's about it. Questions?
We'll leave the questions open for a little bit here, and we'll see if we get any additional ones. We don't have anything else in the queue. Looks like you've answered. Actually, we do have another one here. This Tom, who asked some questions here in the session, wanted to just thank you for the overview and the details. We appreciated that.
Great. I'm glad to help.
Don has a question. no critical path for Agile, though. Is that correct?
No critical path for Agile. Let me think about that. You know, in Agile, there isn't a lot of, trying to think about this, there isn't a lot of meaning for critical path. You're focused on user stories. You're focused on your task at hand. Only once in a cycle, once in a sprint, at the beginning of the sprint, you talk about the overall picture and you talk about what you're going to be doing in this sprint, and maybe you look at your different reports and you understand if you'll need to take out some user stories in order to meet your deadlines. But there is no actual critical path that I can think of. So no, I couldn't think of a way or a reason to use critical path methodology when you're working Agile.
We did get confirmation from another user just saying, yes, no critical path for Agile. It does not work in task sequence. So
Yeah.
confirmation. Steve asks, can the tools that you showed handle operations and maintenance tasks as well as project tasks? Our engineers and technicians wear many hats.
Yes, I think that the example, well, the example wasn't exactly to that point, but yes, you can have projects for different administrative tasks. We have a company we work with where they have it's a customer service division that use the Milestone Consulting tool. What they do is they have this team of people that not only run around Europe and fix tools, they also, the same people also do some training, and they do different things for different pieces of the organization. And then so you have tasks like, or projects like training, or training for certain project name, and so on, and they allocate people according to that. So yes, it is possible to do it that way as well.
All right. We did have another follow-up question from Steve regarding third-party tools. We will, this is a side note, we're going to have a session later in the year that's going to focus on kind of a vendor showcase. So I know that would be interesting, but maybe Daniel, you can just address maybe a few third-party tools that can be used for this process.
Sure. So I showed the Milestone Consulting Group tool. It's called the RPM tool, Resource Planning Manager. It's really cool, and it allows you to manage, again, it gives a tool to the resource managers, to the functional managers, to actually assign the allocations for their team members. So if you have a situation or organization where they're actually working that way, where the functional managers or the team managers only assign the work to the different projects and the people to different projects, and then they assume or they expect the project managers to detail out the work but only use their resources for a certain amount of their time, then I would use a tool like that. It really helps in the organization, and it helps with the implementation of this, of the project server, because it gives everyone a tool to work with. And because everyone can work with it, it strengthens the tool. And then the other tool that I've shown here is the MasterLink tool. This is MasterLink by Matan, and there's a lot of information about it in our website. It is a program management tool, but it is also a tool that allows you to work in various matrix organizations and allow you to reflect tasks or summary tasks from one project file, from let's say the team manager's project file, and reflect that whole summary task into the project manager's file without the need to see all the details. And it also enables you to replace the cross-project dependencies the way that it's done out of the box, which could be challenging at places. If you need to replace that, then MasterLink is a good choice for you. And if anyone has any more questions about MasterLink or the other tool, or wants to hear about other tools that are out there, then there's the showcase that Kurt talked about. You can also contact me directly or go to our website and see things. You're most welcome to do that.
Great. Daniel, do you have a contact slide by chance in your deck there?
No, I do not.
Okay, maybe
That's my bad.
There's a tool there in GoToMeeting where you can do a text box. Actually, what I can do is I can take, if you want to just pop it up there, maybe you can type it right in on the screen there, actually under questions. Exit out of slide.
I'm doing that now.
You can do that. Maybe just.
So this is my email.
And then I'll keep. Well, I have another question. Maybe I can ask you while you're doing that. Regina has a question. Do you use a shared resource file? Do you use a shared resource file, and if so, how do you show, for example, 70% allocation on one project and 30% on another project?
So she's talking about a situation where we do not use project server, but we're using a project file as a resource file, and she wants to know how we can allocate. I can't think of a way to do that out of the box. The way I would do it is when you open a project file. So let's say you have a project file, it's called Project X, and you want to associate a resource 30% of his time to this project file. What I would do is open that project file, have it connected to the resource file, and when you open the resource sheet, go ahead and change the maximum units for that resource to 30%. Now that won't save when you close that file and open it again because you have a general resource file. It won't save that information, but it will allow you during the resource assignment phase of the planning, or the assignment planning phase, you'll always get that person 30% of his time allocated to that task. So that's one way to do it, but that's the only way I can think of doing it.
All right. I'm just going to pop up. I think that's all we've got in the queue now. I don't know if you have any additional information that you want to share or not, but I think what we could do is I could just take back over and pop up the PDU information, unless you have anything else. Okay. Let me just do that real quick. I know we've got a few folks who are waiting for that, so let me make myself presenter again. And I appreciate the demo, and everybody on the call does. Daniel, that was great, a great session. I did pop up your email address as well on the slide. Hopefully that's okay. We'll get that forwarded over, and the website address is on there as well as in the email address, right? mantanconsulting.com. If anybody has any questions about the company. Okay, great. So you can contact Daniel, and I'm sure he'll get you routed to the right person within the company there. For those of you still online waiting for the PDU code, the code is MPUG Web and Learn 050113, and that should be available to claim on the PMI website. We'll have the recording on the MPUG website within about 2 to 3 business days. So with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. Daniel, again, thanks for presenting, and we'll talk to everyone soon, see everyone on our next event. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.